Roughly half a year ago, my 44-year-old male ex-wife, Emma, is 42 years old, moved out to take a new job. She had applied to a corporation and been offered a position in senior management. She had acted without my knowledge since she was certain that I would never consent to go away. We have 8-year-old twins together and have been together for 12 years. We were also married for 10 years. My father was stricken with leukemia a few years ago, and both of our family from Scituate Ad here. Since then, our family has had immense difficulty as a result of my dad's declining health and our constant worry about his future. I want to be here for my mother as well as for him, of course, being his only son. I had therefore not wished to relocate away following my father's diagnosis. I assumed Emma would be sympathetic to my situation, but she told me I was being overly sensitive and that I couldn't keep declining out-of-state job offers and expect her to do the same. We had really been preparing to move away because she wanted a change of pace, but only because my dad was unwell before my dad got sick. However, I informed her that it would no longer be feasible for me following my father's illness. She first made an effort to be understanding, but over the course of the last year or so, she has started to grow really agitated, and as a result, we have been fighting quite a bit. She felt confined here and wanted to move away, but even if I had siblings, I couldn't possibly consider moving away when my dad was in such a state, not to mention that doing so would mean leaving my mother to handle things alone. My conscience would not have allowed me to go, thus I could not have left. Emma was unreceptive to my repeated attempts to clarify the situation, and I began to feel that I was the one being self-centered. Later this year, she unexpectedly told me when she got home from work that she had applied for and been hired for a high-paying job at an out-of-state company. She hadn't informed me anything about this application or this position, so I was shocked by it and found it difficult to be happy for her. I just complimented her since I was kind of shocked, and I kept quiet after that. I recall that day being a very significant event because, let's face it, it was a solid job with excellent money. But more importantly, we got into a fight because she didn't think I was happy enough for her. She told me that she didn't really think she would get the job, but now that she had it, she was thinking of moving away, and she wanted me to go with her. I was just outraged that she hadn't even considered that she needed to talk to me about it before applying. She desired to move our whole family. Being aware of my feelings regarding this, it was one of our worst arguments as a result, and we ended up fighting over it. I truly believed that she was going to file for divorce and put an end to this, since things became so terrible that she had to go and stay with her parents for a few days. During that time, we were in communication with each other, but once she returned home, we decided that since we still had the kids and couldn't let them down, we would try to mend our differences. And because I didn't want to end this marriage at the time, I believed that I could still work things out with her. She told me she loved me too, and that's why she wanted to work things out. I was certain that I loved her. She was determined not to give up on her goals, though. We so came to the conclusion that she would accept the position and that I would remain behind after much deliberation. In order to make this work, she promised to attempt to make as many trips back and forth as she could. Given that neither of us was prepared to give up on the other, our only choice at this time was to choose a long-distance marriage. Although it was difficult for me to accept, I had to do it for the time being until we could decide what we wanted to do in the future. After that, she went away and returned home every other weekend. But even then, she would only be able to visit for 2 days before returning home on a Sunday night flight, because every Monday, she would have to report back to work. I knew she was tired, but since she had accepted this arrangement, there was nothing I could do. She must have grown resentful of me over time, as her behavior toward me deteriorated. We had made a commitment to try and work things out, but every time I tried to call her during the week, she would always be incredibly rude to me, and we would always end up fighting over something. It felt like she didn't even want to talk to me after a while, so I stopped calling her on my own and started waiting for her to call first. After that, we stopped talking to one another. Even when we did communicate, it was always icy and strange, and I wasn't sure how to interpret it. Eventually, one weekend after spending nearly 4 months gone, she returned home carrying divorce papers. We were having a lot of difficult moments, and when she got back home that weekend, she told me she couldn't do this anymore. We had not spoken for nearly 6 days due to the argument we had had the last time we spoke. I was trying to think of a reason not to file for divorce, but I was at a loss because during our last argument, she had actually suggested that we separate and end our marriage permanently. I should have known it was coming because in addition to our arguments over the past few months, she had been growing more intimate with a high school buddy. Let's call her Melissa. Our acquaintance was a terrible person and an even worse influence. Melissa and Emma had always been close friends, and Melissa had even attended our wedding as a bridesmaid. However, from what I knew about her, she had always seemed strange, so I had never liked her. She was a complete gold digger who constantly pursued wealthy married guys in order to avoid having to commit to them and still enjoy the perks of being in a wealthy relationship. Even more, as if what she was doing wasn't disgusting enough, she would boast about it. Emma used to tell me that it was her personal decision and that we shouldn't pass judgment on her when I brought up her behavior with her. That really enraged me. Eventually, I chose to completely disregard that friendship and simply quit talking about Melissa. It got easier in the end since Emma and Melissa grew apart once Melissa moved out and became preoccupied with her job and children. In any case, since Melissa had moved away, I had been aware that she and her kid had been residing in the same state for a few years, likely to scout for new victims after her second divorce. Interestingly, Emma contacted Melissa when she had a job offer in the same state, and it was Melissa who gave her an introduction to the area and assisted with her move-in and other things. I was there the entire time, and after all these years, I thought maybe Melissa would have matured, but no. She remained the strange, uncomfortable person I did not feel comfortable with. Emma was really close to Melissa again, but I couldn't really say anything about it because she was Emma's only friend there. Throughout Emma's months-long stay there, she informed me that Melissa had introduced her to a few of her own friends and had been a huge support system for her ever since she moved out on her own. This group that Melissa had brought Emma to was really risky since, from what I recall, it consisted of 3 or 4 mothers who were on their own. According to Emma, these women connected on Facebook and formed a sort of support group there. These women had all dated men and had children together, but for a variety of reasons, their partners left them, leaving them to raise their children alone with the only assistance available was a check for child support. Because Melissa's pals were mostly similar to her, it wasn't as depressing as it would have seemed. They had pursued extremely wealthy men, had affairs with them, became pregnant, and when these men chose to remain with their wives and families, these ladies were able to persuade them to send a sizable child support payment, which allowed them to maintain their way of life. In actuality, it served as payment for them to be quiet as well as assistance. Since these men, I assume, didn't want their wives to find out about their extramarital affairs. All of them had some sort of internet venture that no one was really interested in. But they were all self-employed and wanted others to think they were doing everything themselves. However, in actuality, they were con artists, proudly referring to themselves as independent women with complete autonomy to follow their own laws and subsist on the earnings of men who were foolish enough to fall into their traps. Emma found it amusing, but I found it repulsive and didn't think it was a good idea for her to be hanging around with them. But she would not stop standing up for her pals, telling me that she had met them all personally, and they were all very kind women. I also didn't want to fight over that because we were already fighting about a lot of other stuff. I remained silent as a result. However, during our final altercation prior to her filing for divorce, she confided in me that she greatly respected Melissa's resilience as she was parenting her 2 children admirably on her own, without any assistance from men. I ended up laughing at that and telling her that because that was not their child, but rather a meal ticket for them. Anyone who makes that much money from getting pregnant after having an affair with a wealthy guy would also probably be taking good care of the kids. And that's what set off our massive blow-up fight since, up until then, we'd been doing our best to control our tempers. However, the irritation had been building for months, and that day, a small argument about a single issue was enough to get the better of us both. We began berating one another, calling one another names, and expressing our deep dislike for the state of affairs. She just responded, "It would probably be better for us to go our separate ways if we were just going to fight like this all the time." And she disconnected after that. The phone call. I assumed she was going to call me to apologize and that she didn't mean that. However, That never occurred, and I was also very angry with her. Thus, I also didn't bother to get in touch. I couldn't find a reason to stay with her anymore, so I decided to move forward with the divorce when she came up with the paperwork that weekend, or both. Despite our best efforts, it was not successful. Regretfully, not even the children, for whom we were purportedly remaining together, were able to witness our reunion. We weren't content even when we were together. We therefore made the decision to file for divorce rather than raise them in a poisonous atmosphere. Given that there is no waiting time in our jurisdiction, and that all we need to do is divide our joint assets, the divorce process was really easy. She didn't want to take the kids away with her at this time, so I got to keep the house and the kids. And for the time being, we could continue with our plan of her returning here every weekend to spend time with the kids. We kept doing so because we had been sharing the expense of raising children anyhow. We would let them choose what they wanted to do once they were a bit older. Though it was inconvenient for us both, we didn't want to argue about custody because we think our children should grow up with both of us. Regarding the house, we had an oral agreement that we would list it for sale in a few years and divide the proceeds if and when it sold. Nevertheless, the divorce was finished almost a month ago, and I didn't believe she would get back to me because during the divorce process, we didn't really have anything to chat about outside of our legal sessions. Since we would still be following the same schedule, it felt like nothing had truly changed. But now that everything had been decided, I was attempting to deal with the situation. Since I was no longer married to Emma, my life would undoubtedly change in a significant way. Nothing much had changed, but I had to explain to my kids that their mother and I were no longer together since they were also quite puzzled about what was going on. However, she made the decision last night to give me another call in an attempt to work things out and salvage our relationship, as it seems that she had made a serious error and wanted to go back and undo the divorce. She had been crying, and during the phone call, she was practically inconsolable. She went on a tirade about how she had unwittingly glorified the lifestyle that Melissa and her friends had been abandoning, and that she hadn't brought it up to me sooner since she understood how I felt about Melissa because of that group. However, following our most recent argument, she encouraged her friends to get a divorce, and they agreed. Initially, she wasn't sure about it, but they persuaded her to speak with a lawyer they connected her with. However, a month has gone by since then, and despite her best efforts to actually get over it, using dating apps, going on blind dates, and going out every other night, she has only been able to meet up with strangers, and it's just made her feel even more pitiful, because at least with me, she knew that I loved her and she loved me, even throughout our arguments. Above all, she is incredibly lonely right now. She laments the children too. She was assured by her friends that this will pass, but she still feels guilty and alone following the divorce. In addition, her employer had been doing rather well when she started, but since then, her compensation has been lowered multiple times because it seems they overstated their success to lure her in. Furthermore, her current wage is less than what she was first offered. It's not exclusive to her. She believes that the corporation only tells people that things will get better if they keep working hard. But everyone in the organization has been through the same thing, and that's simply to keep their staff around. She wants to return to me for another purpose, and that is one of them. She expressed her desire for me to give it some thought and undo the divorce decision, saying she simply missed her family and the past. However, after she had finished talking to me and describing her position, all I could do was feel angry at her because I couldn't believe she had let her foolish, immoral friends convince her to obtain a divorce. She never paid attention to me, and now it turned out that they were the reason she took the decision she did. I had constantly cautioned her against Melissa and made it very clear that I didn't like the company she was keeping after she moved away. Had she made a mistake herself? I think I was even a little sympathetic to her. However, it genuinely irritated me that she had chosen to listen to the individuals I detested. He's going to have to give me a call and start crying over all of these things, like it was so simple for me. She just made me angry to the point where I snapped at her, and she had to lie there because I was not going to support her. I had done everything I could to make this marriage work, though. And when I say this, I'm not referring to the past few months. Ever when my father became ill, I have been unrelentingly defending our marriage. She had also done so for a while, but during the previous few years, She had exhibited extreme selfishness. That's how we came to be in this situation, separated. While she had been abroad, the least she could have done was make an effort to comprehend my circumstances and feelings. But she let folks who she knew I didn't like to have too much of an influence on her. I told her that she was no longer a high school student, and that I would not put up with her using a childish justification that her friends had led her to make poor choices. She was not going to her parents' house intoxicated. This was a totally different scenario that had an impact on the kids' lives as well as mine. And now she wants to undo the divorce simply because it's difficult for her. First of all, it is obviously not how it operates. Secondly, I wouldn't do it even if it did. Everything she had said me before had so disturbed me that I was unable to control myself. I advised her to seek support from her friends if she was experiencing feelings of loneliness or guilt, as they likely cared for her enough to provide emotional and financial support, even if they weren't the ones who had pushed her to file for divorce. She had essentially just admitted that following our divorce, she had been hooking up with different people for the last month, which really irritated me. She was free to do as she pleased because, in theory, she was single. But it made me feel very uneasy and melancholy because it seemed to diminish everything we had shared over the previous 12 years. I informed her that I no longer wanted her in my life, particularly in light of what she had just told me, and that I would make sure the kids stayed with me as I no longer thought she was a good influence on them. She began to cry even more and said she was willing to go to any lengths to make things right. But I told her she had to accept the choice she had made, and she was no longer needed by the kids or me. I hung up and blocked her after that. My ex-in-laws sent me multiple texts this morning when I woke up, telling me that I shouldn't have said what I said since she was already in a bad place, and that it wasn't kind of me to kick her when she was down. They seemed to be trying to punish her more by telling her that the kids and I didn't need her, saying that it wasn't required because she was already regretting everything that she had done. I don't know, but my ex-in-laws have been really nice to me after the divorce, so I wouldn't have given a damn what they think. I defer informing my ex-wife that the kids and I no longer need her and that I don't want her back. First update. Hi everyone. I sincerely appreciate all of the encouragement you have left for me in the comments. I'm not sure how to put it, but knowing that so many people are rooting for me truly means a lot to me. What matters even more is that so many of you have reached out to me, sharing your stories and assuring me that everything will be well. You guys are really kind, and I have faith that things will improve. 4 days have passed since my last post, and after our talk, I banned Emma, so she hasn't been able to contact me. However, she is scheduled to visit and spend time with the kids this coming weekend. I'm not sure what will happen as a result. Next, she would simply pick up the kids from my apartment and travel to her parents' place to spend the weekend with them for the previous couple of months, ever after the divorce was started. Every now and then, we would all come here as a family for some quality time together. She would, however, generally try to avoid me, which I was okay with as it made my life easier. But who knows what will happen this weekend? Her parents have been quite furious with me and have informed me that the things I said to her were so harsh that she has ended up weeping every time they have contacted her. So I'm actually kind of dreading having to face her. Following that, since Emma hasn't exactly been kind to me, I haven't been responding to any of their messages because I don't know what to say to them. However, I feel bad because I know Emma isn't very emotional and that I really hit her where it hurts because she has been crying so much. Things haven't been going well for us. We could have had a wonderful life together, and I still feel terrible for her because I think she ruined it all for herself. I tried my hardest to make things work, but it's not like I can handle the marriage without her support. To be honest, I'm at a loss for words. Update 2. Emma came over to pick up the kids yesterday, and throughout our conversation we covered everything that was said. It was difficult for me to be chilly toward her, because it was obvious from her appearance that she had been going through a difficult period. She then asked if I would be willing to speak with her for a short while, and I eventually said yes. After the kids went to their bed, we had a conversation during which she expressed her sincere apologies for everything, not just the past few months. She mentioned the previous several years, stating that she didn't deserve me, and that it had taken her a long time to understand how egotistical she had been all along. She told me that, in the weeks following the divorce, whenever she went on a date or made out with any guy, All she could think about was how uncertain she was about the kind of life she wanted for herself, and how awful she felt about throwing it all away. It wasn't all that it was talked up to be, but she had made it all up in her imagination. She began crying again as soon as she realized she had lost me while we were still speaking, and although I tried to console her, she told me that it would only make her feel worse because it would only serve to highlight the kind of person I was, and how poorly she had treated me. Hearing her say these things about me was kind of bittersweet, because I would have valued that much more if we had been together. After a while, she told me that she had made the decision to resign from her work and return home in order to be nearer to her family, so I'm not sure what more can be said about it. She also desired to spend more time with the children, since she had been missing a great deal of time with them previously. Staying outside for so little money and making such sacrifices didn't seem worth it. She asked me not to file for full custody, even though I had promised to do so, and I told her not to worry about it. That was the only thing she asked of me. Although I had said it in the heat of the moment, I had no intention of following through on it because she and I had always insisted that our children shouldn't have to suffer, and I knew they missed their mother. I also knew that the kids would benefit more from spending more time with her, and I would be in favor of that. When we had finished our conversation, she told me I was a fine man and apologized again for everything. She thanked me for even allowing her talk to me and assured me that she would make an effort to be a better mother and person. Following all that transpired, that made me a little upset rather than just slamming the door in her face, but I remained silent. She then departed with the children. That concluded things, and to be honest, I didn't think it would end up this way since I assumed she would come over and pick a fight with me. However, this was a pleasant surprise. We are at least back on the correct track now that she has apologized. I won't say that I forgive her and that it's all in the past. I doubt I will be able to return to her. After everything that has happened, that is highly impossible. But the least we can do is do our best to co-parent our children and create a pleasant environment for them. Naturally, it will also benefit us more. Let's now examine what is ahead. 3 updates. Hi everyone. Alright, so my divorce was finalized 4 months ago, and following my previous update, Emma kept her word and returned here a few weeks later. Our children have been dividing their time between the two of us ever since. Up until now, it has been fairly convenient for them to spend half of the week at their mother's and the other half at my residence. Emma first spent a few weeks with her parents, but after that she was able to find an apartment a few blocks away, and the kids are really enjoying having 2 homes. My ex-in-laws and I are getting along just fine. We don't communicate often, of course, but they have expressed regret to me for upsetting me during Emma's breakdown and assured me that it wasn't my fault. It was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but as her parents, they were simply so worried out that they ended up blaming me. Emma and I are also getting along again. Not that we are friends, but we are friendly and have kept things respectful, so I wouldn't say we are on good terms.